Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the biggest freewheeling live streaming poetry podcast on the planet. So glad you could join us. This is episode number 279 of the Rattlecast. Hayden Saunier is our guest. She'll be here in just a little bit. Before again, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry. And you know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. And like I said, we're going to go first, though, before we go to Hayden Saunier, to Dante Stefano, today's Poet to Respond poet. And here he is. Hey, Dante, how you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me, Tim.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. It's only been about a month since your last Poet to Respond, a little more than a month ago. And, you know, I mentioned before, I just love that you send poems almost every week because you're such a great poet. And it's great to know, like, there's that relief that we're going to have a great poem. And this was one of those weeks where there was so much news going on. It was just this avalanche of things happening and so many different topics to write about. And one of them, of course, was this plane crash, which was so devastating. And a lot of poems talked about that tragedy, but I felt like, you know, yours was the one that really, it made, like, me and Katie both cry as we were reading it in the submissions because you brought your heart to it so strongly. So tell us a little bit about how that poem came to be and why you were writing about that topic.
Well, as you said, I write Poets Respond poem every week, and I had already written my one for the week on Monday, and I read the news every day, mostly in the New York Times, and of course I read about the horrible plane crash, and I thought about it, and I thought, when I read it, how could you write a poem about that? And, you know, even though I've written poems about many things, and my daughter's 7-year-old daughter has started a figure skate or ice skate. And so that detail about the figure skaters that were on board the plane really stuck with me. And I thought about it for the next day or so. And I kind of had like a strange, almost dream about, it was like my daughter and the figure skaters a little bit. And then I was thinking about that James Dickey poem, Falling, about the stewardess going out of the airplane. Mm-hmm. And then I just started writing this poem, and this is what came. And then afterwards, I after I wrote it, I read a lot of the coverage about how it had been this plane crash had been politicized, but I wasn't even thinking about that when I wrote it. I wasn't even aware, naive as I am in some respects. I wasn't even thinking about that. Just the magnitude of the horror of the thing, you know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not only a parent's worst nightmare, but the kind of nightmare we envision all the time. You know, like every time we put our kids on a plane or they go off on a school bus or whatever, it's just that always there in the background, that thought. And then, you know, poetry as the empathy machine that it is, you know, connecting with that experience and living that out for the moment and the breath of the poem is a really powerful experience. So thanks for writing that. Do you want to go ahead and read The Skaters?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. The skaters. At the rink, they whoosh, these little bundled beings, their scarves graffitiing the air, my daughter weaving among them, her long legs pumping, the bright pink kitty earmuffs a blur. And I imagine those other skaters this week, their blades asleep in their stowed luggage, their ankles describing triple toe loops and double axles above the twilight Potomac. We parents know what it is to be afraid of the uncertain, the incendiary, the whirring dark, deviations from flight plans, the unconfirmed reports of whomever, whatever wasn't supposed to happen. But the fact is, it is always happening. What we most fear and feared and glide away from, but never escape. And still the faith that these feet, ours and our children's, will trace something beautiful, an arabesque on ice, the perfect cursive of a name that will melt away, but the memory of which we might trace so delicately, like this line right here, whirling away into the dear humming dark.
Yeah, and that was The Skaters by Dante Stefano. And really, that was the kind of poem that I envisioned when we started Poetry Spawn, 11 years ago now, is that putting the humanity back into the news was what we wanted to do with poetry. And that poem really does. So thanks for writing that and sharing it, as you always do.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, take care, Dante.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, it was Dante Stefano with The Skaters. That was the poem of the day today on rattle.com. If you are not subscribed to get the daily poem by email, all you have to do is go to rattle.com, go to the bottom of any page, and you'll see that field to put in your email address. Get the poem by email so you won't miss any wonderful poems like The Skaters right there. All right, we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Hayden Saunier. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Like I said, tonight's guest is Hayden Saunier. Hayden is the 2011 Rattle Poetry Prize winner for The One and the Other, a wonderful poem. She's also published 5 collections of poetry, and her work has been awarded a Pushcart Prize, the Gell Prize, the Pablo Neruda Poetry Prize, and nominated numerous times for the Pushcart. Her acting resume also includes film and television appearances in The Sixth Sense, Philadelphia Diary, House of Cards, Mindhunter, Hack, and Do No Harm, among a whole bunch of other things, including regional theater too. Poet Laureate Emerita of Bucks County, Pennsylvania. She lives in the Philadelphia area, and here she is, Hayden Saunier. And Hayden, it's so great to have you on. I've wanted to get to know you better for a long time.
It's great it's really fun to be here. Really fun to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you are one of those poets where if I see it used to be by mail, I remember you used to send submissions by mail. I'd see the envelope come in, and I'd be excited that I get a Hayden Saunier poem. And, those years are long gone, but it's still wonderful to see you and have you on.
Well, and I think when we wrote back and forth, I think that ham poem was the first one. I think that was
that was one of my favorite titles early on. It was that self-portrait with a Smithfield ham we had to cut with a bandsaw.
That's right.
This is a wonderful poem there. So it's really great to talk to you. Let's start out with a poem, and you wanted to read "Say Luck" first, right?
This is an older poem and not in this book, but someone had suggested it to me, and now I'm thinking, having just heard Dante's poem too, and thinking about that maybe that's why this came up. Anyway, say luck. Since you are alive and have leisure enough to read poems, I'd say luck has entered your life more than once, unless this is the first poem you've read. If it is, well, I'm sorry, but still you're alive, and that involves luck and her trusty companion, split-second timing. Remember those movies in health class. Remember the odds for each egg, each spermatozoan. This morning, I woke determined to write a poem about love. In my dream, I'd crossed over a bridge, like the bridge by a slow-moving river where my boyfriend from high school and I used to park. I wanted to slide slowly down the naugahyde seats of that car. Writing does that. It takes you back. It makes you look odd things up, like how to spell naugahyde. But the first poem everyone reads should be about love, not luck, and not trees. I mean, no offense to Joyce Kilmer, who was, did you know this, a man? Alfred Joyce Kilmer, writer, editor, poet, sniper shot through the head at the Second Battle of the Marne. That's how quickly it happens. Say love, and death kicks in the door, ejecting spent shells as it reloads, click, click. My old boyfriend's not dead, but his brother, who parked by the bridge with Susan St. Clair, is 5 years of Lou Gehrig's disease. That's how slowly it happens. Love walks down the road and death waits at the river. Love wakes in the morning and death's in a car, and you're in the crosswalk, your mind on a bridge and a boy and a slow-moving river, thinking how poems of praise should be about love, but it's luck pulls you back. Luck and split-second timing, those two with their lassos of not yet, not yet. Say love and death checks the chamber. Say death and love drops his head in his hands. Say luck and bow deeply to split-second timing, since you are alive to read this.
Yeah, that's a beautiful poem. That was Hayden Saunier's Say Luck. And that is such a relevant topic, I guess, all times, but especially now, there's such a sense that we're living in these dark times. I think that was the beginning of Kim Edenetier's book, the epigraph last week. What do we do in the dark times? We write poems about the dark times. And but at the same time, they're the most vibrant, lucky time to be alive. Like I think about all the time, if we could trade with the king of the grandest palace 200 years ago, our life that we have now, the comforts, the possibility, the opportunity, the ability to read and access things, the access to knowledge, there's so much that we have that, the greatest king in the history of the world before now would have been envious of. Exactly. And so there's so much to balance thinking about that positivity and the negativity too. And most poems, though, are about the negative side. We tend to focus on that. So I wonder, why do you think that is? And do you often try to write poems in this vein that go against the grain of that, the sort of misanthropy and focus on the positive?
Well, I think that there's the whole theater thing. I was talking about this just the other day, of the tragic mask and the comic mask. And the comic mask is really like the tragic mask with its corners of its mouth forced up. It's not really looking happy, but it's another angle on on everything that's happening. I think it is hard for us to understand that things are actually still even maybe getting better. It's hard to keep your mind around that right now. But I'm married to a psychologist, and anytime I've asked this question, you remember the terrible things because that's what keeps you alive. Mm-hmm. Having the happiest day of your life won't necessarily, the memory of that won't necessarily keep you from, the next thing. So. Yeah.
And too, I was just thinking about how, the knowledge of good and evil, that was like the original sin, and it's the knowledge of good and evil that causes all suffering, according to that mythology. And now we have so much knowledge of the good and evil going on, that we're sort of bombarded with it. And so, I think it's important for poetry to focus on that, the other side of it too.
Absolutely. And it's not necessarily a duality. It's all, it's all wrapped up together.
Yeah, in the wheel, which we'll be talking about in a moment. Take us back before we do that, before we go out of the wheel. How did you come into poetry? Do you remember the first time you wrote a poem and you said, yes, that's something that did something for me? The act of putting that on paper meant something.
Well, I wrote a little bit as a kid. And I remember writing something in driver's ed in high school and getting, of course, made fun of. It was much later, and I think it was because I started because I was in the theater and doing all kinds of things, and especially, words in your body in the theater, especially Shakespeare, which is beautiful poetry. There's just nothing quite like it. So I started just scribbling. I started writing, poems because they were short. There was a poem that I wrote about when I was doing a production of Hamlet and during the first Gulf War, and watching the scene. They were rehearsing the Ophelia Mad scene, and when the announcement came in, and I remember, oh, okay, I can see how I can that was a moment for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to talk more about the theater, because that's a topic that fascinates me, because I'm not a theater person. I was like a sports person in school and like went in more that direction. But before we do that, can we read another poem? Let's jump into the book and read the first poem from Wheel.
Okay. Well, the book has 4 poems in it. I'm just going to read the first one, called Wheel. And much of the book is about the kind of cyclical world, especially of nature, because I live on a farm. And certainly in the last, all through the pandemic, in the last many years, actually, I have found it such a comfort to walk daily, walk twice a day with dogs, with animals. And so that's where a lot of this has come out. So there are 4 poems named Wheel, and they kind of do a repetition, and the last one picks up all of them. But this is kind of pantoum-y, but it's not a pantoum, so don't be. It's called Wheel. 1. There is a how to it, but not a why. We know enough to know that much, not more. The way tree roots upturned are birds flown into sky, as if the point is to become what we are not. We know enough to know that much, not more. In early spring, our footsteps green the path, as if the point is to become ourselves, and then, in time, become an otherness in early spring. Our footsteps green the path, we walk together through tall woods, which is an otherness we will become in time, while everything around us turns and turns. We walk together through tall woods in every season as one rolls into the next, while trees and birds around us turn, and green the path we will become in time. The point is to become what we are not. Birds slowly sail through earth, tree roots learn sky. We know enough to know that much, not more. There is a how to it, but not a why.
Yeah, that's a beautiful poem. That's the title poem, and that repeats through the book, Wheel, from Hayden Saunier's book, Wheel. And I was curious about that form. We're only going to show one of the poems, but you hear that sense, it's pantoum-like you said. Yeah. And then it was one of those like fascinating and like almost frustrating too, because I was trying to figure out like what form is this, and why are they repeating where they are? And so I'm wondering how that series of poems came to be, with the repetitions as they are in that poem, and then also through other poems in the book, because you mentioned there's 4 of them, and the last one pulls a lot of the lines through to make a whole new poem. It's
almost a cento of all of them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This one came first, and it was that sense of walking the same paths that I walk, and the understanding of the whole cyclical nature. And that's a real comfort, that it's just, it will come, the spring will come back. The winter, we will continue on. We do continue on. And I love to break forms. I've written a crown of sonnets, I've written Villanelle, but I can't really stay within the lines. So I tried this, and then I stopped fighting it and let it loosen up again, and then left it as it was. So that's why I say it's kind of pantoum-y, because that tight a form just didn't suit the poem, I didn't think. Mm-hmm. So I give myself permission to do that.
Yeah. Well, that sense, it's really the central theme of the book, that sense of renewal, and the way, we repeat, our lives are a pattern that's been repeated throughout history, which is one of the things you think about doing classical theater too, or looking at older poems. Like I think of like Catullus, like reading his poems, and how it's just like life right now, even though it's 2,000 years ago. Like we're just like repeating the same. We're still humans, and humans have been humans for so long. And so, so how much does that inform your poetry? That background and thinking about your place within this broader body of literature that's been spanning as long as history has lasted.
Oh, I think it's a lot. I think all history, and I laugh because theater has. I mean, when you do it, you do all kinds of things. You learn all kinds of strange things, and if you do the history of theater, you start way back there. So It is, I think it's important to remember, even though it feels like we're the first people who are experiencing anything, we're not.
Mm-hmm.
We're just another iteration in a way. And we know maybe with luck we're doing it a little bit better and a little bit better, but like read the history of Istanbul, Constantinople, and
Yeah, yeah. And that is the
pretty
miracle of
insane.
progress, that incremental change. And it doesn't seem like it's doing anything to you, but it is making a difference. Um, let's do another poem. Let's do I go for a walk while my cats eat a mouse.
Right. Well, this is kind of, yeah. I go for a walk while my cat eats a mouse or a vole. It's hard to tell which. I do know it cannot be saved, though I didn't observe the precise moment its life left its soft gray limp body. But sometime before the equally soft and gray short-haired domestic American cat tossed it high through the bright morning air of my kitchen, his way of checking for heartbeat, displaying his skill, and my way of learning a change has been brought to the state of my household affairs. Let's be clear. I know what comes next. Snap crunch of the delicate bones of the world in the well-designed jaws of the world. And being both worlds, both the cat and the mouse, though it's likely a vole. And because like a god or a demigod, or simply by being a mind and a body with two working hands slipping peas from their pods at a sink, I can exit this scene when the real business starts. So I pull on my black rubber boots, walk out through wet grasses, grateful for rain, which has finally come in the night. Huge storms that have killed some, revived some, cracked open the lives of some others. Late June. Wild cherries dangle rain shiny from rough-barked old trees. Roses petalless, thorny canes bent. Ditches rushing with runoff. A suddenly wide creek conveying what's dead to broad rivers downstream. In the pasture, 3 willow trees shimmer and sigh. I return to the kitchen to pick up the carcass, carry what's left to the field where I'll toss it, then get back to work. Some days, like this one, there's nothing at all to be found. No cat, not a scrap of the vole, the whole room clean swept, as though neither life happened nor death. There's only this morning sun warming wide empty planks of pine floor and a bowl of shelled peas by the door.
And that one's I Go for a Walk While My Cat Eats a Mouse by Hayden Saunier. Another beautiful poem. And you see the theme, in the 2 poems from this book already. And that was one of the interesting things. It was one of those books that the theme was very strong. Like the poems were all tackling the same kind of thoughts from so many different angles. And it's rare to see that in a book that doesn't have a really clear narrative arc. Like it was really like they were wrestling with these concepts, And I'm wondering how did that come to be organically? Like, did you happen to be writing these poems that were sort of grappling with the same thing, and then you put them together, or did you know and were writing sort of toward that topic?
Oh, I wish I was someone who had this. I wish I had this beautiful concept laid out and wrote toward it. I'm not. I think I was writing these poems and struggling with these concepts. And it is kind of true. We do write the same poem over and over again sometimes because we're trying to wrestle with something or trying to get it right. And so there was a point in which I think I embraced that and I said, oh, okay, that is what I'm doing. So some of the wheels toward the end, like the one that starts, okay, I repeat myself, that's what I do, there was a moment in which I thought, oh, okay, as I was putting this book together, just go for it. That's what you're doing. It's and you're trying to figure out how it works, and so just embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is it. It just kind of developed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, already just out of the corner of my eye on the chat window, I'm seeing the word details appeared so often. And that's the wonderful thing about your poems, going back to the first poem I read of yours. And like that snap crunch of the delicate bones of the world and the well-designed jaws of the world, like that focusing in that closely to the sound and things like that. Those details are what bring your poems to life so strongly. Is that something that you think about consciously as you're composing poems? Like, I need to go here for the details? And how do you approach that? How do you get such great details in your poems?
I've started to learn how to really look and really listen and, allow myself that time. And I'm a big reviser, so I'll go back in often and look at something, even if it almost seems like a placeholder, try to find something else. But I'm also really love the sounds. And so I often, a poem will start just from a line or a rhythm. So I guess I've learned how to really observe and try to think about those details. And I was really happy when that one came, when, because you're looking at both the vole and the cat, the mouse and the cat. They're doing their part. They both have a design. So, I think I have tried to take those words of really observing life and really taking it in and not being so judgy about it. But
yeah. You mentioned, being a reviser. And that the risk of revising is that you take the life out of your poems, which we see so often. Sometimes I'll say, like, the poem is great, but like this section doesn't have the life that the rest does. Like, do you have a previous draft and then that's like has a life is there and it was like revised out of it somehow. And I think that's a real risk, especially with like workshops and things too.
Oh yeah.
So how do you revise a lot? Because I'm not a big reviser, so I don't really know. I'm still trying to figure out how this should work. But how do you revise without sucking that life energy out of the poem, which is such a mysterious thing? It's so easy to lose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, believe me, I have ruined poems that were really close by just bearing down so hard on them because I wanted them to be there faster than they were. So I kind of do a back and forth now with a lot of poems. I will write a draft and then make sure I put it away and don't work it too hard. I think and then you go back and you kind of just know where it isn't working. And so I'm just a little delicate. I go back and forth and I try to keep the time in between. I think the time helps you not want it so much. I think when I really there have been some poems, but I have this belief too. I kind of think that poems are sprinkled around, and if you can't pick it up, somebody else will. And honestly, I have read a poem somewhere and thought, I had that poem. I had that poem, but I couldn't do it. And thank goodness this person did.
Oh wow!
So,
Yeah, that's so fascinating. The collective unconscious aspect of it. Like we're having
really
similar
do think
thoughts.
that
Yeah. Whoever that guy is that was the other Charles Darwin, came up a little too late.
You must see it sometimes with especially with Poets Respond, that there's not just that it's the subject matter, but maybe there's an attack, there's a way, or people are going at the same thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense that people need to tackle something and are trying to figure it out, but it does seem like one poet every week or whatever figures it out. Right. It's like these are failed attempts at like wrestling with it, and then someone like caught it somehow, like caught the golden snitch or whatever from Harry Potter, and then they have it, and that's kind of. But everybody was like trying to catch it. So
that's right, but that's also a real time constraint. You have such a time constraint, and I think some people are faster than others.
Yeah, that's definitely too on their brooms. There's a question about this last poem, so let's do that first before we move on. Drya Mentira says, the Vole poem was shockingly beautiful. How do you write about the cruel violence of the world, poetically/productively, instead of falling into voyeurism or participating in the cruelty? So interesting question there.
Well, if you notice in the poem, I left. Because I mean, it's happening all around us. I mean, it's just the way it is. You know, you mow the field and the insects come up and the birds eat the insect. I mean, it's constant. So I think I've come to kind of understand that I don't want to participate in it. I don't necessarily like to be there to hear it or see it. We spend a lot of time saving critters and getting them back outside. But I think it's kind of accepting that that neither is good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way they're designed. The cat's designed to catch the mouse.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that too in this life. Well, let's hear another poem. What do you want to read next, Hayden?
What shall we go to? Do you want to do the other self-portrait one? The self-portrait, we don't need to do some, I can skip to that one.
Okay, sure.
The self-portrait as 3 cubic feet of compost.
Sure, let's do that.
And this is a poem that came straight out of listening to an NPR piece. So the prompts are everywhere, as somebody was mentioning. Self-portrait as 3 cubic feet of compost. That's 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, and will require a small truck to move, meaning I won't have that light and airy feel of ash, nor will I lift and vanish like a cloud ascending, holy, 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 when cast to the winds as small, odd-shaped bony bits clunk to the ground. I'll have heft. The brochure describes a layering of wood chips, alfalfa, straw, and me in a careful blend of nitrogen and carbon nestled inside a steel cylinder. Then 6 weeks later, voila, topsoil. Upside, no carbon footprint, no chemicals, no hot burn, because we've had enough of fires, haven't we? Downside, you can't just leave me in a drawer or on a closet shelf or sell me in my porcelain urn at a yard sale by mistake. I'll be work. You'll have to shovel me. So I suggest you simply dump me on the bigger compost heap and turn me for a season, then pay me out in spring to flower beds, red raspberries. Oh, to be threaded through with root, crisscrossed by traceries of vole and worm and grub, and what frisant thrills 1,000 diamond points of frost and freeze may bring. By then, I'll be completely us, it, them, and we. We'll germinate, get rinsed away, cling to a snowy egret's awkward yellow feet, fly, plummet, land, and settle back into the suck of black-gray mud. We'll collapse into cool, dark corridors. We'll send up spiky stalks of pink-streaked lotus buds, enclosing hearts made strange with chartreuse fruit and golden fringe. There'll be no end to us.
Yeah, and that was Self-Portrait as 3 cubic feet of compost by Hayden Saunier. And that poem, self-portrait type poems, come up a few times in your work. And I'm wondering about that and how that connects to your other career as an actor. How is that a reason why you're drawn to that? Like putting on different masks and that kind of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that absolutely. There's like, it's the wonderful thing about theater is that you get to live so many lives ever so briefly, or at least you spend time imagining that. So, and I haven't written that many self-portrait poems, but I kind of love that idea. But I also write a lot of poems that to me are kind of like inner monologues, so I enjoy that too, that it's kind of like that kind of theatrical thing, or or like the little asides where you're speaking something, then you go, oh yeah, like, did you know Joyce Kilmer was a man? So those kinds of little theatrical things I like to do.
Yeah. So tell us about the background of your acting. Is it something that you always loved to do? Did it rise alongside wanting to be a writer, or did one come before the other? How do those interrelate? Yeah.
No, that's where I started, and I love theater. But as my life changed, I lived in cities for early on for many years, and then as I moved out here, and I worked out of Philadelphia, then I moved further. I was in a town, then I'm now in. As I move further and further away from a city, it's just harder and harder. And so I miss it in many ways. I miss a lot of things about it, but. And for a while, as I like to say, poetry was like seeking out new forms of rejection for less money. So even or paying to be rejected. So as it is now, as certainly as I've gotten older too, there's less work. So I really enjoyed being able to write because I can employ myself whenever I like.
Yeah. So how do you confront the two? Is there a different way? So sort of poetry is a replacement, gradually for acting. Yeah. Is there a difference in it? Confronting the blank page is such a hard thing, and seems very different than having like a script that you're working on. Even though I think we talk about this all the time, but Rattle was founded out of Jack Grape's method writing workshops in Los Angeles. He's an actor who taught and learned on the School of Method Acting, and then thought, hey, let's apply this to writing and adopt personas and voices and let ourselves, flow freely through that. And so it's sort of the heart of Rattle is in that relationship. But I'm wondering how that relationship is for you. Is it very similar writing poetry in a way, or was it really different to pick up?
No, I find it really different. I really miss collaboration. I really miss the camaraderie. I really, I miss a lot of those aspects, or you're reacting immediately to whatever is happening that the other person has brought. I miss having a script and knowing, even though lots of things go wrong, but you rehearse something. There's so many things that are different, but the things that are wonderful actually is that even though, I do have to confront the blank page, I can make my own little play each time. And I think I kind of thought about it that way as I first started writing. It was like, and for some reason I was never interested in writing a play. I don't know why.
Yeah, but, that is interesting.
Yeah, but because that's a very specific, playwriting is a very specific skill and art. But
well, how so? Say more about that. Like what? So many poems are like a monologue,
Yeah.
And we had one, the worst case of plagiarism in Rattle ever was a lifted monologue that somebody pretended was a poem. And, so there's so much in common with it too. So, but how is screenwriting or script writing, playwriting different from writing poems?
I don't do it because you have to tell the story just specifically through dialogue, through words, that you have to talk the story essentially. And so I've just never, I'm not the person to ask about that because, but playwrights are remarkable. And I think it's probably easier to write monologues than write. I can barely even speak to that. I think because the playwrights I know, I admire so much. But for some reason, I just never found a way in.
Does the acting history, all your experience there, affect the way that you write poems? As far as like the pacing, and the way that the rhythm comes out, like so much of poetry is the voice, and then finding the voice and like figuring out what that is. And so much of the voice is the cadence and the rhythms of some kind of natural feeling speech, or it's like this magical music that comes out sometimes, and we're listening for that. does having acted out scenes and scripts so long change the way that you approach that voice or help you develop voice as you're writing a poem?
I know that I'm always reading out loud. I'm always speaking a poem out loud. If as I'm trying to work something out, if if you pass by, I'm talking. I just sound like I'm talking to myself constantly. But because I have to kind of feel it in my body. So I do know that that is a way that works for me. I can't just it can't just be in my head. I have to hear the sounds. And sometimes you write something that looks really good on the page, but it's almost impossible to speak in your mouth. There's the word, the rhythm is off, or the words, or it's all something. Um, so I know that I do that physically. I kind of take it in physically. So I would have to say, yeah, that all of my poetry is approached kind of through an acting point of view, through the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, would you say? Because I think to me, it feels bodily to me too. And you see the best poets when they're reading, they kind of tap their foot, they're kind of moving around because it's coming. A lot of I think it was Maria Gillen talked about like writing coming through the arm, like she couldn't write typing things out because she had to, have that moving the pen, and it was like your whole body was kind of doing it. And I wonder, is acting a similar way? 'Cause to me, it's because self-consciousness is like the death of creativity,
Right.
And so when you have that conscious layer of your brain engaged with the writing or maybe the acting too, then you don't have whatever magic that is. It's like a mystery, but whatever it is, you don't have it. And so is acting like bodily in the same way that writing is?
I think it's a little different because you're working within the script, but once everybody's off book, and you're kind of exploring the different ways in which a scene can go, because you're exploring each one moment will change the next moment, just like one line will change the next line.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very much it's very much like a call and response, in that regard. And I think they're little, as an actor, you often finds interesting little details that are little keys to your interpretation of a character.
Mm-hmm.
So how they walk, if they're straight up, or if they're bent over, or if they're cover, however they cover, or however they wear their hat, or whether or not they would ever, those little details,
Yeah.
I think, really help the actor find the part. So I guess I'm accustomed to looking for those small details.
Yeah, well, that goes back to the details that we talked about before. Maybe that's the eye for the detail. It's like, these are the ones that matter. Like, these are the little details. If I put these little pebbles down, that's going to have the biggest impact, and that's why the writing works so well.
And that's also the way I think we connect to the word connects one person to the other person, because that image, that little particular resonates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Really well said. Let's read another poem. Want to make sure we get to a good number of them. What do you want to do next?
Let's see what. We'll do the wisdom package.
Yeah. Okay.
That's this is just like a little play, but from a little short scene from real life that I did not make into a play, I made into a poem. The wisdom package. I ask the youngish eye doctor why my eyes itch and burn, and new floaty bits of paramecium-shaped debris swim through my view each day. And he tells me enthusiastically that this comes absolutely free with the wisdom package, an honor I have been awarded. I blink. And he adds, the wisdom package comes with lots of other free stuff too, but just like life, some people will get more than others. I guess he's 30s, 40s tops, and I am falling in love with him for his gentle way of reminding me I'm getting old and that it's a privilege. I've passed the air puff test, seen retinal scans which look like the red-orange surface of the sun, each with its pinprick dot of optic nerve, thin thread connecting the eye to the dark, ornate theater of the brain where the picture shows of our lives play. I laugh and ask him about knees, knuckles, liver spots, forgetfulness, and to each complaint he answers, wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. We do not know one another's stories, how many each of us has lost, the who or how of it, from war, disease, or fate's unfairness, doling out more death to some than to others. He and I give each other's hand a quick squeeze, let go, and get back to the business of my sight. He swings a heavy black heart suspended from a giant arm in front of me, clicks through pairs of lenses with the careful ticks of a slowing clock. I blink and answer him each time. Clearer, better, thank you, yes, much clearer now.
Yeah, another beautiful poem. That was The Wisdom Package by Hayden Saunier. And Hayden, in the chat right now, everybody's talking about the titles of your poems. The Wisdom Package, another great title. And I think it was Clayton Clark who brought it up first, but then everybody's agreeing. What do you think about titles? How do you end up titling a poem? Is it before, after? What goes into a good title for you?
Oh, boy, that one was given to me. The Wisdom Package, he just gave this poem to me. And
so did you know that was the title, like, before you even started writing?
Well, oh, yeah. I mean, I thought, because it was just such a great concept and he was such a sweet thing. So that one I knew. Sometimes it's like a poem. Sometimes you kind of know the poem. And sometimes you're not exactly sure how you're writing toward a poem. So I'd have to say sometimes I've got one, I know exactly what it is, and other times I struggle a little bit and then find it or take it to a trusted friend to say what's up, and sometimes somebody will say, no, that's perfect, you've got the title, and someone will say, no, terrible title.
Yeah. Well, what do you think goes into a good one? Is it just a gut feeling? Like, are there some principles you have, or do you just kind of feel it out?
I think it has to give you, sometimes it gives you the most vital piece of information that without it the poem wouldn't work. Mm-hmm. I think that's one way. I think they work in a whole couple of different ways. That's one they work. One, they like draw you in, like, yeah, one of my favorite titles is Self-Portrait with the Smithfield Hand We Had to Cut on the Bandsaw, because you want to hear that story.
You do, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way, because I think that kind of just draws people in. So I think they work in a whole different way each time. So yeah, I think they're doing a little bit of a different job each time, mm-hmm. but I try to not do a whole series of really long titles, even though sometimes get.
Yeah, to me, it seems like that's the key, to, like, make sure it's doing something, productive. Like, it's like a wasted opportunity if it's not adding in some way, either like throwing you off or like adding a detail or making you, aligning your thoughts or setting up an image, or, it's got to do some kind of, work, or else it's a lazy title.
Well, exactly. And like untitled. Mm.
Yeah. Oh, that's the worst. In the museums, the art galleries, or it's just untitled. You're like, why? Give me something.
Yeah.
Well, it's that time I should say, if you're enjoying this conversation, do make sure you click the like button. As it always is the case, only about half the people have clicked like so far who are watching live at the moment. And it really does help if you click something on Facebook, like the hearts and the laughs or the love or whatever is better even than a like. On YouTube, just the thumbs up, but whatever you can do. Also, make sure you're subscribed. That helps a lot too. Let's hear another poem, Hayden.
So where do you want to go from here? That's up
to you, whatever you want to do.
Let's do Page 74, This Late Thanks, because that's kind of a nice, and then maybe I'll read a new one if we have time. How's our time?
Yeah, we have good time. We have about 20 minutes left or so. So
This Late Thanks. Hickory nuts shake down from shag barks onto blacktop, their leather cases cracked at the seams, releasing the dense center that as a child I'd try to bust open for food with a hammer against stone. It never worked. My first careful blows revealed an intricate chambered hardness that clenched the meat too tightly for my fingers to pick out, so I'd bring the hammer down hard as Thor and smash the halves to mush, shot through with broken shell, impossible to eat. Sometimes a truck's weight can't bust a hickory nut's core. Today they drop atop the asphalt or skitter into ditches where they'll soften and take root, get storm-washed into creeks to rot, decay, go around again. For years, I thought I could discover where the sweet spot lives, between swift obliteration and slow, patient time, the angle, pressure point, the perfect words, to pry wide, the small, hard architectures we hold so tight inside, but no such place. Instead, I have this late and quiet thanks for fate or happenstance or even grace that any one of us has fallen, broken just enough onto an earth or into hands that give.
another great poem. This Great Thanks by Hayden Saunier, or This Late Thanks, I should say. I forgot to say, too, if anybody has any questions for Hayden, leave them in the chat windows on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll pass them along. But Hayden, I wanted to ask you about reading poems and performing poems. You know, as an actor, you have so much more knowledge about how to make a poem come to life than most poets do. And I think, you know, poetry is an oral tradition. It's so important that we read our poems aloud and present them in a way that people can appreciate and understand them. So do you have any advice, or how do you approach the reading a poem that we can take away from and read our poems better as a result?
Well, I think that, yeah, I think the best thing is to read your poem as though you were telling it to someone, a friend, to let the words work. But the kind of, you know, we've all been to some poetry readings that just I get a little frustrated because it's like, oh, come on, like have a little stage sense, have a little sense of so but we all get nervous and it's really hard. Mm-hmm. But I really think that really speaking, practice saying them aloud, practicing them aloud, but really stop and think about moments in which the meter is really working, or you're really making a point. Slow down. You don't, you know, change your rhythms a little bit, but really, I think it's as though you have to talk like you're communicating to someone, like you're really trying to tell them something, not just. I mean, even Robert Frost has that da 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 da, which was a thing for a while. But you can't hear 30 minutes of that. That's the other thing, is that there's got to be a little bit of. So I'm not sure if that I'm giving really very good advice like that on the fly, but for the most part, I think you have to stop and really just kind of speak the poem, like tell it to a friend. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you know, nerves and being nervous, and I was at a 7th grade play not too long ago. It was supposed to be a 45-minute play, and it ended up being 23 minutes long because everybody read, you know, and then they ran off the stage, you know. And I think, and those are the theater kids. I kept thinking those are the theater kids that by high school will end up loving performing, you know. But everybody starts out, you know, being nervous, I think. And I assume it was something that you at some point overcame. So
no, I still get nervous all the time. I got nervous before doing this, like, oh, you know, because I don't have the script. I don't have, you know, there's certain things that those are like comforts.
Is there a way you like channel that into positive energy or something, or how do you handle nerves? And I mean, you don't seem nervous at all. So I
Well,
mean, so how do you deal with that?
Traditionally, you warm up. I do a little, if you're stretch, you stretch, you do things like that, and you just have to breathe and relax and know, but you just you have to get over it. But actually that reminded me because I was thinking about this the other day. I love the fact that theater nerds were mentioned in Alison Luderman's poem of last week about, although it was a hard poem, but she did call out the theater nerds, which I thought was a great thing.
Yeah, that's great. I was thinking about those middle schoolers that I think that Dale Carnegie course in public speaking, the trick of that was really just to put people in front of each other and then embarrass themselves enough that you forget to be embarrassed. Like you kind of like make embarrassment and that self-consciousness be old hat so that you forget that you're there. And I guess it's just like exposure helps a lot, I would imagine, right?
I think it's, is doing it and realizing that you're going to be okay, that your heart may be pounding, but you're still going to be okay. But it is funny how, and poets will do it too sometimes. They'll just go really fast. And it's like, no, we need to have some time to hear each poem, or that's why it's also nice to have some talk between poems, because, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to hear.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, let's stick a pin in that because I want to come back to it, but let's read another poem.
Why don't we, I'm going to, two cat poems, I don't know. Why don't we read the new poem called News from the Neighborhood? Do you have that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Although it's another cat, but you're there. News from the Neighborhood. The sad grass plots in front of every house go dormant in late summer. But this year all seems flat out dead. Swaths of dried brown patches burned by heat and lack, and the spicy urine of drunk boys stumbling past on late nights, stuffed with bucket beer and hot wings dipped in pools of hell's half-acre. Root structures tangle. The block's a mix of old and new, but you never know what will return. Even my cat came back. He was locked up for 6 months down the street by a woman in a house with all white furniture, white carpets, and bleached gravel for a lawn. She wouldn't let him go. Turns out you can't steal a dog in this town, but you can commandeer a cat. There are no laws, no rules for cats, because a cat knows how to read a room. So when my cat escaped again and crazy cat thief tried to lure him back with canned salmon and an open door, he dragged a bleeding baby bunny through her all-white house, and just like magic, he was mine again. I hear that the grasses speak a language underground, share warnings with the shrubs and street trees, though no translations needed for the lines they've scrawled about us in this hard, dry piston soil. I whisper to them, sleep, sleep and wait for better times. Then choose your moment like a cat. The spring will come.
Yeah, that was Hayden Saunier reading News from the Neighborhood, a newer poem. Wheel is a book that came out recently, but poems are rolling out all the time. About that way we were talking about before, Hayden, I know you are the member of or founder, I think, of a poetry group called No River Twice, which has a different way of presenting poems. And that's the thing that's just so interesting. Like, I love poetry so much when it's good and engaging, and there's so much of it isn't, and like there's a disconnect there.
Right.
And so what do you do? First of all, tell us what you do with No River Twice, and how is that different than other poetry readings, the typical poetry reading?
Well, it's a group reading, but the way it's different is that the audience actually somewhat directs the way the reading goes. And as I said, yes, sometimes poetry readings can be kind of dreary, but I did one many years ago in which a couple of us unknowingly all had a poem that had a pig in it. Aaron Baker had a poem about a pig feast. I had the ham poem, and Ed Skoog read a poem about a pig running through a graveyard in Texas in the middle of the night, and the audience got really giddy and happy and said, like, more pigs, more pigs. So I thought, this is so, it was kind of like improv, and we were like, oh, do I have another pig poem? No, I have a ham sandwich. But the audience really came so alive that I got a group of wonderful poets that are in this Philadelphia area with me. And what we do is we start with a random poem that is picked by the audience or in the chat when we're online. And that poem is read, and the audience tells us after it's read or in the chat what they liked about it. What word was it that they liked? They liked sky blue, or they liked the idea of the guitar in the corner or something. And then another poet will say, well, I have a poem with a blue rocking chair. So we'll go to so we just kind of stone through. We don't know where we're going to start. We don't know where we're going to end, but the audience creates it with us. Mm-hmm. And we save the lines that were the little connector lines. And Chad Frame, who actually is in this, Chad is one of our poets, and he's very facile. And he usually we save the lines to create a cento that becomes kind of the poem that the audience made from their choices. And we work from it there. It's a lot. It's just a lot of fun, and no one has to listen except for kind of what they like. And I think sometimes people who feel like, oh, I'm going to hate poetry or I'm not going to understand it, the permission is given is just listen. Mm-hmm. Listen for what resonates, what you like, what you want to hear more of, or what you connect to in any way. So I'm a real believer that I'm so sorry that so many people seem to have had such terrible experiences with poetry and would rather have a root canal than go to a poetry reading. So it's my way of trying to introduce people to some of the joys of poetry without them feeling like they have to be all in.
Yeah. Well, that's so fascinating, and it's such an important question. Why do you think, it is that way? Why do you think, people wouldn't want to be at a poetry reading? What is the problem? Where's the disconnect? This series, it's great. Chad is Chad Frame, the current Rattle Poetry Prize finalist. I noticed on the roster a ton of people that we've published in Rattle, so that's really cool to see. Yeah. And in that group, it's the engagement, I guess, and interaction with the audience that makes it work a little better. Yeah. Is that the main thing that you think is missing? Like what is missing? Why is it that people will sit and enjoy theater or watch a movie, even if it's a terrible movie? There's so many bad movies, and yet right. They're there. There's a million of them, and yet there's no Netflix poetry channel. And why do you think that is?
I would say two things. I know the main thing that I hear when I talk to people or ask people, it's that they have been made for whatever reason to feel stupid. That they say, I don't want to hear it because I'm not going to get it. I'm not somehow and I don't know I don't know how this has come about, but people go, I don't get it. I don't understand it. And it makes me feel stupid. So nobody wants to feel stupid. So why would you voluntarily go anywhere where you're going to feel like you don't understand it or you feel so I think that's the main thing. So it's not that I think at all that poetry needs to be made, dumbed down, but because look at Rattle and look at Rattle's success, like Poetry Without Pretension, which is a great thing. It's I think anybody who comes to a Rattle reading or reads the journal sees that there's a whole lot of different ways to express things, and it's not hard to understand. You just have to take a moment. So I don't know. I don't want to say bad teachers, because I think there are great teachers out there opening the poetry world to people.
Yeah, yeah, but there is, I think, the sense that, and you see it even among poets that are experienced, that poetry is like a kind of puzzle, and if I can, make it so it's hard enough to get at what I'm actually talking about, and then maybe, the aha moment can be like, oh, I pieced the puzzle together, like it's a, Nancy Drew mystery, and it was the man with a revolver over there all the time, or whatever. Yeah. And it's, I think, not understanding that that's not what it is, that poetry is an experience, that you're sharing like the breath of somebody, and it's like the way that makes you feel, and not how it pieces together like some kind of like, thing you could have on a rubric sheet for testing,
right?
And
right.
is that the problem, that it doesn't fit with the way we do school? Is like, it is only that?
And I'm not exactly sure where we kind of and it just how we've gotten there. But I think you're exactly right. But I think foremost, poems have to communicate something or connect in some way. And so anything and everything that can be done to help that happen, I think, is the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's squeeze in 2 more poems. Hayden, do you want to do that? Let's do. I think we have time for that. Do you want to read one of the newer ones and then go back to the book, maybe? So maybe a short monologue on entropy, and then we'll go back to the book.
Okay.
Okay.
A short monologue on entropy. I'm standing beside the guacamole at a party, nodding small talk affirmations toward another guest, in a sad attempt to hold position beside this creamy green homemade deliciousness, without my seeming to be doing exactly that, when the guest, now detailing his artistic process, tells me that chronology doesn't interest him as a writer, and bam, I hear a screeching chain reaction smash up on the fogged-in 4-lane highway housed inside my head as a dozen cars crash bam, bam, bam into a crumpled, hissing heap. I drop my empty corn chip on a plate. Imagination is a closed course with professional drivers. No one is hurt, thank God. But how did I get here? Lots of stuff doesn't interest me. Designer handbags, solving the quadratic equation, but time, duration, sequence, cause, effect, and what came first, or is there such a thing? Or what's the difference between emit and might and time and me and it? I remember reading that the only thing that can be measured on its own is loss of heat, the cooling of a dying thing. The rest is relativity and blur. So fast, the nanoseconds and the years. And now the guacamole is gone.
Yeah, great last line there, especially. That was a short monologue on entropy by Hayden Saunier. Let's see, we had a couple questions. Let me get one from the audience here. Where did it go? I was looking at. I lost it. I think it was Diamantino. I'll just make it up, but wanted to ask, I don't know why I can't find it, about the form of your poetry. They noticed a lot of couplets in a lot of your poems, and then you also have a lot of one stanza poems too.
Right.
And
right.
I was wondering, yeah, exactly, like the last one. How do you like shape your poems? Is that in the revision process? Do you know, as the poem is working, what shape it's going to be, and why? What's the difference between a poem that's in couplets versus a poem that's one of the longer single stanza poems that you do? Because I think those are the two sort of modes you tend to be in.
Yeah. I think I think some of it is kind of depends upon, like this one, like the short monologue, it's of a piece. Sometimes it's a single sentence, but it seems to make sense as a single thought chunk to, others, I tend to, I love the couplet, and I simply love the couplet kind of as an exercise, because as I'm writing, I can see both lines really clearly. They don't get crushed in there. So I can see the line, or the rhythm of the line, the length of the line, what the words in the line. So it helps me kind of craft the poem a little bit when I can see it in couplets. And I tend to do that sometimes, and then I'll go, oh, that's wrong, and it's squeezing things in a different way. So I actually think that I would be a very different poet without the computer, because the fact that I can immediately go in, just copy it, and then put it into a different form, really it helps me with all kinds of things, with lineation. So I sometimes make those decisions in revision. So or I try other kinds of ways of varying, especially when you're putting a book together. You want it to look somewhat varied, the poem, long, short, to give the reader a little bit of a break, so it's not just, at least in a book, in a chapbook, which I think is actually the perfect form for poetry. It is like the perfect length, the perfect form. You don't have to do that as much, but so that, again, that's a revision issue. Sometimes I'll think, I don't think this is working this way, and I'll try it in a lot of different forms, and until something seems to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, too. I mean, without the word processor, I mean, it's just, you have the technology, you might as well use it. It's been around for long enough. And so I write poems, it's like a sound that I'm pushing through. I just write it as a paragraph and then figure out how I want that sound translated on the page most, And so shaping is the last thing I do, and sort of the most fun, because there's no stress at all. It's like I already figured out the poem I got somewhere, and now
that's cool. That's
shaping it up and figuring out how to make it translate for other people like it does in the sound pattern in my head or whatever.
Exactly. Well, and then you get to play with the lines and the way you break the lines, which has so much kind of fun to it, and so yeah. It was. Oh, some thought just went through my head, but I can't remember what it was. But it was about that. Oh, I know what it was. Like that, the compost poem. It looks like a prose poem, but I've never really understood the prose poem, honestly. But it was a compact 3x3 container, so that's why it came out that way. So it is technically a prose poem.
Technically. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of controversy over that all the time. It's one of the, probably 20 different episodes of the Rattlecast we've talked about somebody, what is it, nobody really.
I keep thinking, well, this could be one, and then somebody said, nah, that's not it. It's like, how do you know?
Yeah, like pornography. I know it when I see it. That was Maro Dowdle, by the way, with that last question. So we'll give you credit there. I'll ask you one more thing, and I should ask this question more, but it's a tough one. So what is your all-time favorite poem? Is there a poem that moves you most of all the poems by other people, someone else that you've read?
I don't know.
I know, it's the hardest. It's the last. I put you on the spot.
I know a poem that gets me every time, and now I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a Seamus Heaney poem about postscript. Do you know that poem?
No, I don't, actually. That's why it's an important. I should ask this every guest, but
I should. Postscript. It's beautiful.
Well, maybe maybe we'll pull it up in the second hour.
You could look it up.
Yeah.
it absolutely enacts the thing it is doing and gets me every time.
Interesting.
If I could pull it, yeah.
Well, I have. Let's see, do I have it here? Well, we'll pull up. We'll read it in the second hour. How about that?
Here, I will. I'll look at it right now. Postscript. Isn't that? Oh, I'm going to get everything in the what? Everything else, I'm sure I'll get.
Well, I've got it right here. I could read it if you'd like.
Oh yeah, read it.
Okay, I'll read it. I've never read this before, so we'll see. This is Seamus Heaney's postscript. Oh, I guess wait, hang on one second. I'll put it like this so everybody can read along too, of course. Here we go. This is postscript. And sometime make the time to drive out west into County Clare along the flaggy shore in September or October when the wind and the light are working off each other so that the ocean on one side is wild with foam and glitter, and inland among stones the surface of a slate-gray lake is lit by the earth lightning of a flock of swans, their feathers ruffed and ruffling, white on white, their fully grown, headstrong-looking heads tucked or cresting or busy underwater. Useless to think you'll park and capture it more thoroughly. You are neither here nor there, a hurry through which known and strange things pass, as big, soft buffetings come at the car sideways and catch the heart off guard and blow it open. Yeah, that's a wonderful poem. Thanks so much. Great to hear, a poem like that. Yeah, that is great.
You are neither here nor there.
Yeah,
A hurry
really. I mean,
which
that's Haney at his
pass
best too.
It blows every single time. It blows my heart open.
Yeah. Well, it's great to hear a poem that does that to a poet, so we have to ask that more often. But I know it's like putting people on the spot and then the mind blanks.
Well, I came up with one.
You did. Good job. Well, let's close out with one last poem from you, Hayden. What do you want to end with?
Oh, I don't know.
Do you want to do maybe one of the other wheel poems, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe let's see. I'll do the last one. Well, just do the last one.
Okay, yeah.
Although I'll do the last wheel because it makes sense. Wheel 4. There is a how to it, but not a why. We know enough to know that much, not more. But I repeat myself. That's what I'm for. Obsession is a turning wheel. Fox prowl the way tree roots upturned or birds flown into sky, as if the point is to become what we are not by obsession, but design, because we know enough to know that much, not more. In early spring, our footsteps green the path, the giant wheels crisscross the field, the swallows swoop and dive, as if the point is to become ourselves, and then in time, an otherness that dies, returns, repeats itself in early spring. Almost the same blue chicory and Queen Anne's lace green the path we've walked together through tall woods, which is an otherness we will become in time, because we are time. We become it, dark eyes skyward, as everything around us wheels and turns.
Yeah.
Design may be obsession's other name, and I repeat myself. That's what I'm for. We're all the same. We turn around that core as swallows write this text into the sky. There is a how to it, but not a why. We know enough to know that much, not more.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to end the book and this Rattlecast. That was the fourth wheel in the book, and you can see how that those first lines come through. Also, all the lines in the other wheel. It's a great way to close out the book. It was really fun to read with the arc of that wheel rolling through it. Hayden, thanks so much for being a guest today. It's been so fun talking to you, as I knew it would be, and sharing your great poems. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks. So that was Hayden Saunier. That newest book is Wheel, which you can find from Terrapin Books. You can find all of Hayden's work at her website, haydensaunier.com. That's Hayden, Hayden, Saunier, Saunier.com, haydensaunier.com. Find that. All 5 of her books are wonderful in there. That last one, Wheel. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a poem that explores the perspective of the other side and arrive somewhere opposite to where the poem begins. And that is the prompt for this week, a tough one, so we might have fewer prompts than normal. Let's see what we get. But that is your prompt. A reminder, it's that we're aiming for about 3 minutes per person on camera. We don't want to extend it too much because we want to get to everybody, as many people as possible, to share your poem. It's a 1-page max. All you have to do is go to promptlines@rattle.com. Email your poem to promptlines@rattle.com. Then I can show the poem on the screen like we've been showing for Hayden's poems and everything else throughout the show. Email it there, and then join the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. Go to the chat windows there, click on the link, but only if you want to share a poem, only if you have a poem based on this prompt, and only if you have its 1-page max. If you have a longer poem, feel free to submit it for Prompt Poem of the Month, but we really want to keep it tight and concise here so we can get to everybody and have a great time. So do that right now, and we'll be back with more poetry. And we're back. Oh, that's too hot. We're back with our prompt poems editor, Katie Dozier. How you doing, Katie?
Hey, I'm doing great. I really enjoyed that interview and discussion.
Yeah. It was really fun talking to Hayden. I love talking to actors because it's something that, you were in theater, but I never was. Joe is, Colin, my son too, love it. Lizzie loving it.
Yeah.
Actors are like all around me, but I have no experience on stage or theater. So I find it fascinating to talk to anybody who has that experience.
Yeah, it's really neat to hear from her.
Yeah, so the prompt for this week, like we said, was to write a poem that explores the perspective of the other side and arrives somewhere opposite to where it begins.
I knew this was a tricky prompt, I have to say, but having gone through the experience of writing it myself, even trickier maybe. I was aware. So it was like I had a couple of false starts on this one before I arrived at something.
Yeah. Let's see. So how did you address it?
I think it'll become pretty self-apparent from when I read the poem, so maybe I should,
Okay.
I should go ahead.
Okay.
I viewed it as the other side of a relationship is how I went. I tried, my first attempt was the other side of life, but I literally couldn't figure out an entry beyond like me saying in the first line, I'm dead and writing this from the other side, and that didn't really work very well in the end.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's hear it.
Okay. After 14 years. A volcano without lava is really just a mountain. I held on for too long just for the rush of feeling anything at all. Now I light you up, use a fool for fuel, how all that burns once again returns to something new. Here I stake the flag on the other side of us, the other side of you, the fire having finally burned straight through. Some trees blaze from the inside out. A Luna moth has 4 wings, but not a single mouth. Smokey the bear never wanted more than to help with all he warned. I've taken baths so scorching that they felt pins and needles cold, but pain is half of what it means to live, to lick a red lollipop swirl. But were it not that I first burnt the pot, I'd live submerged in the icicles I've now forgot.
Oh, really interesting. Great rhyme at the end, too. After 14 years. And it's fascinating because there's so much, hiking up a mountain type image. We just went, but it was before.
But I wrote it before we went on a hike today with the kids.
You read that before we went on that hike. And
I
it was
did.
The burn damage coming up, too.
Yeah,
that we
it's
saw.
true.
And
Yeah.
really interesting poem. So did you find it hard to, go to the other side? Is a trajectory?
I feel like I kind of cheated in a sense going to the other side of something I went through. It would have been a lot more difficult to write from another person's perspective, which is kind of what I hoped to do with the prompt, but it didn't come because I guess I'm just too selfish. So
All right. Well, we speaking of that hike, we got back really late from that hike.
we did. I wrote my poem before.
Yeah, and I wrote it after. And so I had a very short amount of time. But something came out.
I see a poem. The number of times I've heard, I don't think I'm going to have a poem this week, Katie. I'm like, I've heard this, Tim. You're going to have a poem. I believe in you. And it appears to be a poem on the screen now.
It does. There's a poem on the screen.
Yeah.
So this is a Gestalt switch. And on the hike, I was like, we're not going to have any time to write a poem. So I had the kids give me the topic.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So I was like, it's the other side of something. What's the other side of kids?
Nice.
And Colin was like, war. Mm-hmm. Then we had this long conversation about what the Cold War was, because Lizzie wanted to know, like, what's a Cold War? And it ended up being
Joe and I were talking about theater at the time. I picked the right discussion.
So anyway, so it ended up being the war. So I just went with this first line. And then it's called Gestalt switch, which is it's the name for that face image thing that goes back and forth. Every time it's a Gestalt switch when you see the one versus the other.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, Gestalt switch. The other side of the war isn't always a war. Yes, all the valleys have names and the rivers, but the names are different. Every mountain peak has been climbed, but at different times by different boys panting with their arms spread wide. And when the bombs fall, they fall on the empty fields, sending the field mice deeper into their burrows, but only briefly, as the owl that it startled returns to its roost. So a very quick little poem, Gestalt switch. And I was thinking about, really being the going to another place, like going peace at the end. But I decided for everybody's benefit to be more subtle. Instead of selling the peace. But anyway, that was my poem for the week. Let's see what everybody else has to share with us, and let's go to Hamet Malik first.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Hamet, great to see you.
you too. Got me unawares there.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I try, like, I look up at this. It's kind of like the order that people appear, but also like who went later, if I could remember last week. And you were toward the later end, so we thought
All right.
it'd be great to get to you first. So how are you doing today?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Very well.
And where did you take,
yeah,
where
this
did
was a
prompt
bit-
take you?
Yeah, I hope I took it the right way. We'll see. I
Well,
felt
there
it
is no
took me
right
to
way,
a
first of all.
Yeah,
perspective.
every
Well,
way's
you
the
know,
right
well,
way.
there-
Exactly.
We'll see. Thank you. Illegal. The spider that migrated to the west corner of the bathroom ceiling 2 weeks ago has had babies, a cloud of them. My sorry to its broken body in 3 scrunched up tissues falls only on the ears of the offspring that survived my onslaught of a spray of poison droplets and the sweep of my broom. I know I'll be finding those who escaped in other rooms of my house in weeks to come. My niece is sobbing to her mother, whose dark look prompts my teaching, which I believe, though I need to clear my throat. You must understand, this is a human home, and my children will jump if they wake next to a spider. But my niece doesn't understand the laws of home ownership and borders and the right to peaceful enjoyment. Neither did the contents of the tissues in my hand.
Yeah, what a sweet way to go at the end of that poem. Great ending.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the title and everything. I think you went in a great direction. So.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely. No, thanks so much, Hemet.
Thank you.
Yeah, always such a pleasure.
Thank you.
That was Hemet Malik with Illegal. And let's go to our reigning prompt poet of the month, only temporarily, though, because Katie's about to read all
I'm
through
reading.
the
We
submissions.
had a lot of submissions this month. I'm reading through them and enjoying, and really great poems also. So it's going to be a serious competition, I think.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Campbell, what do you have for us?
Yep. The limit of empathy. I am a believer in the value of feeling what the other side is going through, but lately I've been having doubts. I aim to understand, and yet imagined pain is nothing like the ordinary kind that strikes the unprotected heart and finds only offense in offered pity. What's the benefit in adding to the glut of suffering that chokes this world of ills by my usurping pain meant for the bills? Their pain belongs to them. My assigned part is celebrating with an undivided heart. Belonging's more important than belief. I'll stick to my own tribe. Go Chiefs.
Well, that is a poem that hits very close to
It
home.
does. I
Jared.
really wanted the Bills to be in the Super Bowl. Like, I've literally never cared about the Super Bowl more.
And last week we were up after the Rattlecast till 3 a.m.
Watching
the
game,
replay of that
The
game.
miserableness of that.
I can understand me rewatching the game. I don't understand why you would do that.
Well, we couldn't watch it live because the Rattlecast
Yeah,
was
we were
going on.
watching
it.
Yeah,
And
we
so,
Mhm.
so let me ask you, as a Chiefs fan, do you admit that he passed the marker both times on third down? They were passed, and they're terrible spots twice in a row. Right.
I feel like whatever you need as part of your process, I support you. I believe in you. You're going to get through this.
We need it. We need it, Jared
definitely
Campbell.
do. Thanks, Jared. Well, all right. Also, you're fired.
All right.
Okay. But that was Jared Campbell, The Limit of Empathy.
I
Really,
did not see it going where it went. And at the Bills, at first I thought you meant but I was like, he can't mean the Bills. Oh, you meant the
can't
Bills.
possibly.
he did.
Yeah,
that
that was
was my
funny.
thought
It's the only
process,
thing
too.
I could think of that has two sides.
It's very funny.
Yeah, that was really fun. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you. Bye.
That was The Limit of Empathy by Jared Campbell. All right, let's go next to Sean Evaningo Sanders.
Hello.
Hey, Sean.
Hey.
How you doing?
Oh my God. This prompt had me writing in circles.
Aw.
I was just going crazy. But so I'm not sure how I am on this, but yeah, we'll just see how it goes.
You're here with the poem, and we're glad you are.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
After his near-death experience, my husband shares his theory. He tells me the reason we come to this dimension is to experience pain. He offers no further explanation or comment. Silence. I tilt my head in that curious puppy dog way, scrunch my brow with skepticism, and say, that's bullshit. Why would we choose to come here for pain? Who would want to make the trip? I believe we come here to feel the cool, velvety whisper of a rose petal against our cheek, to discover what it's like to have skin, to be touched, to feel a baby's tiny fingers curl around ours, to get goosebumps and have those tiny hairs on our neck stand up in a tidal wave of emotion, to experience the magic of words, how they roll around in our mouths, oozing their vowels and slapping our tongues with the crispness of consonants before tumbling out, to share meaning and nuance and curiosity and conviction and awe, to see the sky from a different vantage, its vastness of blue with white cotton candy puffs that wisp and shapeshift to tickle the imagination, to ask the one lying beside us in the grass what they see. Oh, glorious conversation, banter and laughter and weeping and singing. We come here for the music, the concert of life, the tremolo of the pitter-patter heartbeat on the sonogram, the chance to create life, art, poetry, to play in the dirt and grow our own vegetables, to follow a recipe for ratatouille shared by a man at the farmer's market who sold us his last loaf of rustic sourdough, to break bread under little white lights strung above the patio, to savor a buttery Chardonnay, to get drunk on each other again and again. He smiles at me. Yes, exactly. I knew you'd get it. Pain is merely the portal, the ticket we all punch to board the train, to get in the game. It's all a crapshoot. We're all just rolling the dice, pressing our luck for the jackpot. I tell him how happy it makes me we keep ending up together in the same casinos.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, definitely. I love literally being in the casino at the end. That's very funny.
I thought you might.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the prompt. It was a fun one.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sean.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Sean Avedingo Sanders with After His Near-Death Experience, My Husband Shares His Theory. Very interesting. Well, let's go next to Christiana Doucette.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Christiana, how you doing today?
Doing all right. I'm trying sitting on the opposite side of the room tonight, and it feels a little weird.
That is very themed. Way to go.
I wrote a sonnet because I figured that it was already set up to have that turn.
Oh, yeah, good point. Mm-hmm.
Because I was trying and trying. Like I think I put this in the Facebook group. I tried one thing that was, ended up feeling like it was too personal and vulnerable and I couldn't share it.
Yeah.
And then I came back and I tried this and I came up with something that I'm okay with.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
So this is Dreams During a Starry Night. She wants to stay up whispering through the night about the dreams she hopes to see made real. I want a solid sleep until daylight warms the sleeping bags and we can feel the summer sunbeams brightening the tent. She turns to me and grins. She wants to know if how she lives is just how my life went. I paint a life's impressions like Van Gogh, a starry night, composed of light and dark, the pointed shadows vague, the sky a swirl. She counterpoints each story like a spark catching new worlds and words. Our hours whirl, 100 haloed stars at her caprice. These dreams, instead of sleep, are masterpiece.
Oh, what a beautiful ending. I love that
really nice.
Closing couplet.
Yeah, we saw a Van Gogh and we went to the Getty and the irises are there. So we were just talking about the swirling paint. My daughter's like falling in love with Van Gogh paintings. So this was particularly timely for us.
I love them.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Christiana. That was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Christiana Doucette with Dreams During a Starry Night. And next, let's go to Mike Bales.
It's another good night of poetry earlier.
Yeah, it definitely
Always
was,
has
Mike. Yeah.
Good on. I had to revise this to get in the point of view. It's the last piece I sent you tonight.
The cat plays?
Right.
Yeah.
I had some ups and downs last year, and I kind of think of living on my own, but the downstairs neighbor brought some cats in, and they're kind of attached to me.
Aw.
Aw.
I'm not a cat lover, but they're okay. He asked once
I
when
kind of agree. That's my
I
feeling
like
about
cats.
cats.
I mean, we don't have any pets.
he asked if I loved him, and this is kind of my thoughts after seeing this one movie, Mr. Morgan's Last Love.
Mm-hmm.
He asked if I loved him. I said, well, no, they're kind of a necessary distraction. So I wrote this. The cat plays. Pounce the cat comes to me after I get up. He mews to me, a cry I can't understand. Going downstairs, I see he's been watered and fed. I ask what he wants. His owner is out. Pounce sits in my lap and purrs. I run my hand through his thick fur for a moment. I'm sure it's loving he wants, but he can't say. But just last night, he and the other crawled through my closets, they discovered. He wanders through clutter on the carpet like a lion in the jungle while the other cat watches. People say he wants his freedom, but he comes back to me. The back door opens and light shines on me. In his eyes, I'm a shadow as I disappear.
Yeah, beautiful moment. Cats have come up a lot this week, actually. Yeah.
Maybe it's a touch of Egypt or something.
Maybe.
There's ancient Egypt coming back, just like this McCartney song. And the cats, I think, were a big thing back in Egypt.
Very interesting. Well, thanks so much for sharing that,
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, it was Mike Bales with The Cat Plays. Let's go to Brian O'Sullivan next.
Hello.
Hey, Brian, great to see you.
Great to see you. I'm thinking I should have written something about cats now because we have 4 of them.
Maybe.
But I did not.
You do seem qualified.
You do.
Yeah, maybe next time. So I thought about all the metaphorical and sort of high-minded ways of thinking about this, and I came up with the simplest, most literal interpretation I could. And it's called semicolons.
Interesting.
On the other side of the wall we share, Ben was talking to a student about grammar, and then basketball, then the blues, then Fred Astaire, then the French and Indian War, and then right back where he had started. And that's why you need a semicolon there, see? And the student saw the clouds had parted. Not sure how he got there, but Ben has that flair. He can make you forget he's teaching. You'd think he's just telling a story, or you'll have him parted between the laughs his lesson with a wink in his Texas twang, through paths uncharted. He's got that easy air of spontaneity. I plod along, and though I can sync up with a student and carry them with me, I envy how he rambles them to the brink of enlightenment. But yesterday he said, let's have a drink, and since it was Friday and I had some time for play, I stepped into his office and sat on his bench. He poured a shot of Maker's Mark and started to tell a story in his way. My envy couldn't survive his story arc. Lost in the flow, we talked the blues away.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that a lot.
The rhymes are so great, coupled with all the great line breaks. Like it's rare to see a poem that has so many great rhymes, but also great line breaks with the rhymes.
And I love how much you're proving the point of the necessity of semicolons through the whole poem. That's really great.
I kind of love semicolons.
Yeah. It's funny because some people don't think that there shouldn't exist.
I know, not us. But not us.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Brian. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yep. That was Brian O'Sullivan with semicolons.
So now, anytime you have a poem with a semicolon, it has to be after Brian O'Sullivan.
That's the new rule.
That's the new rule.
All right. Well, let's go to Rod Deasy next. And wasn't here last week anyway. I missed you, Rod.
Yeah, I got kicked off. My internet wouldn't play.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Last week, and so I have an unread pantoum, but I'm not reading that tonight. I'm reading this one. I approached this from a slightly different viewpoint, kind of the obvious one, I think. But as one gets older, one realizes that you actually know more dead people than live people.
Yeah.
If you think about it. And so this is checking out that particular borderline. It's called Spirit Talking. After life, death. After death, afterlife. Great parades of the dead pass by me, talking. A few stop for a while to revisit memories. Others ignore me or nod. Some smile. My mother is the one I meet most. She drops by to chat quite regularly. She shares her nuggets of wisdom and often reminds me how she avoided her greatest fear, dementia, by managing to cross that borderline before her memories went south without her. She plans to keep on sharing her extensive life experiences. Her intellect intact, she's just as generous with her opinions as when she was alive. The puzzle here, are the tales she regales me with really her saved memories? Or am I inventing them myself and serving them up to give her a dreamtime voice? Despite having survived her passing, she didn't wink out like some blown candle. Her lifelong atheist viewpoint seems unchanged. So I'm inclined to give myself the credit. After all, one can hardly keep denying the existence of a hereafter if one is hanging out there. I don't know, though. Isn't this the way we all live on? Alive and unchanged in the hearts and minds of those who loved us. And maybe inside the heads of some who didn't. I do believe this is one of the reasons for poetry. What say you, Mother dear?
Oh, that's so sweet. It's such an interesting thing to talk about, too. Spirit talking. Thanks so much for sharing that, Rod.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Spirit Talking by Rod DC. Yeah, that's the big other side, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to a first-time caller next, Matt Joseph. Great to see new faces. Hey, Matt.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you calling from?
I live in Santa Rosa, California.
Great.
So I live in a very blue bubble, and so this is a really challenging thing for me. And I apologize, I went slightly over a page, but I'll correct that for the future. So this is called The Other Half.
Okay.
It must be hard to wake up on the edges and see the center, filling up with faces not your own, not even close. To see the future you were dreaming of, the job that paid, the home paid off, your life better by a stretch than any dream your parents woke from, all disappearing over the next hill and the next, whisked away in a fleet of bright electric cars, adorned with stickers that say shit like coexist, scrawled in the symbology of every religion. Christianity, of course, being the last letter, the T. Driven by smug, judgmental pricks who barely notice that you exist, who make enough money that their white guilt doesn't actually cost them a thing, who know about fentanyl from that PBS doc but never had to find their brother, blue and gone, in the backseat of a Pontiac at 3 a.m. You've got me pegged, man. It's me whistling behind the wheel of that Prius. Let me pull over and make you a deal. I'll stop reading the Times op-ed page, which lately does little but detonate impotent rage bombs in my prefrontal cortex, if you stop watching Fox News, which has been loose in Truth's hen house for far too long. And we can sit at a bar together and talk about the way that cities on fire, whatever the cause, burn a hole in our heart. The fact that we love our children and want to leave them a planet, not a husk, for them to leave to their children. That tearing families apart makes torn people. We can crash our frothing glasses together without breaking, and I will whisper to you that sometimes I take guilty pleasure watching the QB get roughed up on Sunday. And you'll whisper back that sometimes you read poetry when everyone is asleep.
Aw, I love that ending.
I
Yeah,
do. I
that is
really do
great.
too. And I love the metaphor of the glasses coming together but not breaking. I think that's really powerful too.
Yeah. And I think that's what you were hoping for.
That's
probably.
exactly what I was hoping for, honestly.
There's-
I wanted to come together.
Yeah.
I really did. And I felt kind of bad that I didn't find myself able to write one, but you did. So,
Yeah, there's too many bubbles in this, this world
there
right
are.
now. That's for sure. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for sharing it.
Yeah,
Hope you come back soon.
Definitely. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was Matt Joseph with The Other Half. And let's go next to, I saw another first-time caller here, Don Caskey. I think maybe Don's been on before. A rare caller anyway. Hey, Don, are you there? You just got to unmute on the Zoom. There you go. Hey.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Yeah, great to see you. I think it is your first time on, right?
It is my first time on, and my poem shows. I'm not terribly pleased. I was about to put a comment in saying I'll pass, but I'll go ahead and read it as long as I'm here.
Yeah,
well we're glad you're here. Yeah, definitely.
Mine was the back from the other side. The other side usually has its good sides. The last time, for instance, I couldn't fly, but they had these four-wheel carriages that were self-propelled, so no walking everywhere, as in other sides. The people were friendly. The sheets were crisp. Having two sexes was interesting once you got used to it. Basically, a lot of time was spent on that, one sex chasing the other while pretending not to. Pubs were fun on the other side. They served this anesthetic that put you in a mood to sing or fight or fuck, each of which was an adventure in its own right. Group singing was the best because everyone was transported by the music and merged into one soul. Fighting was fun too, the dull thud of a punch on the face and the blurring of reality as you processed the feeling. And sex, as I've said, was a major preoccupation. The end goal, you're not going to believe this, but it's true, was to end up naked and sweaty with another person. All fun and good, but when my time came, I was ready. Now I'm back on this side, waiting in the queue for my next trip. Waiting is not a chore. They treat you well. No sex here, not surprising since there are no genders here either. But the food is great. The chef knows her stuff. For example, the lobster thermidor is, oh my God, good. No pun intended. And what's not to like about floating from place to place? I hope I get wings on the other side next time, but I'll miss the levitation we have on this side. Not all other sides are such fun and games. Once I was hatched into a tropical region, pleasant climate, beautiful colors everywhere. Flying was a given that time, wings provided. But perching on branches and making loud chirps all day, well, it gets old. And eating insects leaves a lot to be desired. Very little flavor, usually bitter and metallic tasting. And you have to get used to your food wiggling and scratching on its way down. But I keep a positive attitude. The grass is always greener there, is what I like to say. Maybe I'll see you there.
Yeah, that was great. I really enjoyed it. There's so many great lines in it, too.
Yeah.
Just back from the other side, that big other side we were talking about before. Thanks so much for sharing that, Don.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Don Caskey, and from Lula, Georgia, I should say.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being here. Hope you come back soon, Don.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was Don Caskey with Just Back from the Other Side. Next, let's go to Chelsea McGlynn.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Chelsea, great to see you.
Good to see you too. I want to give a shout out to the Facebook group because I put a plea out for help on this prompt because I was totally stuck on the other side, meaning the opposite political party, and I am not in the right mood to write about that. But I got a lot of ideas and poems and song suggestions that really helped me.
Yeah, I saw that thread, and it made me happy that you posted it, and then I loved reading all the replies. I wish I'd read them before I wrote my poem, so I could have stolen some of the great ideas, but it was really nice. I love that. I hope people make more posts like that in the future.
Yes, it was really great. So my other side is I always write about myself, so this is just writing from a different mindset than I personally believe in.
Oh, great.
Now is a bad time for certainty. It will no longer blacken my skies with a swirling mass of beaks and wings. I couldn't see through that flock, couldn't feel the hot syrup of the sun dripping onto my shoulders, so I shot down every feathered conviction. I'm done with anything that can cast a shadow. Give me translucence, no matter how warped the view. Wings plucked off of dragonflies, rice paper that shreds when I touch my pen to it. Undercooked sea glass, unpolished and unsmooth. Go on, consult with the augurs, the birds will allow it, and ask me if I want to know my fate. I'll tell you the truth, yes and no, but really the choice isn't mine. The past is in front, and tomorrow is a day waiting behind me. I walk backwards into the future.
Yeah, that was great. Another that kind of like mantra to the self kind of poem. Yeah, really good use of the prompt.
That's really challenging to write from a perspective like that. That's not exactly how you feel. So
yeah.
And hello to your cat. Also, I think we should say
this is definitely
hello.
I think it was Catterday.
Heard
something.
the cat poem and had to come.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Chelsea.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure. Yep.
Thank you.
Bye. Chelsea McGlynn with Now is a Bad Time for Certainty.
What if one time we go to someone's camera and instead it's just their cat sitting there?
I don't know, that'd be good.
That would make me really happy.
Well, let's go to Maro Dowdle next.
Thank you.
Hey, Maro.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Yeah,
Good. So I also was kind of mystified by this prompt at first, and I almost reached out and was like, what do you mean? But then I thought, no, let me just figure it out. So there was this character, this historical figure recently I learned about, and I knew I wanted to write about them. And then this prompt came and I was like, hang on, I think this might happen. So it's called Body Love McFadden. Or that's what time called him. See him in his white diaper, 1905. He curves to the right, a scythe. He barely needs to flex to show his strength, cut as he is. He's Hercules, or maybe God. As a kid, he had it hard. Sick, then orphaned. Through exercise, he found redemption. Oh yes, he was jacking steel before Orange Theory, Planet Fitness. The original gym bro before creatine, steroids, getting swole. A hero, he did it natural, just used dumbbells, walked 6 miles daily wearing weights, swore off meat. As habits changed, he changed his name from Bernard to Bernard, rolled it like a lion's roar. That holy beast, physical wellness, his religion. His mission to equate fit with happy, get the whole world on board. He practiced fasting, said it was his instrument to prove his superiority over other men. Said modern medicine was full of shit. Just like my father, who quit the hospital without permission after his cancer extraction, refused the chemo and radiation, got back on his treadmill and weight contraption. Hammer of Thor, he called his bicep, made all 4 of us kids hang from it. Because what can't be cured by doing reps? Dad said he'd live forever. Bernard made it to 87. 2 of his children never made it out of youth as their father refused them medical treatment. When his daughter died of a heart condition, he alleged it was for the best, as her illness would have disgraced him. Dad said if he ever showed his age, we should cut him loose, push him out to sea. Even at the end, bedridden from the untreated cancer, he screamed, "It shouldn't be me. It shouldn't be me."
Oh, yeah, what a profound poem. That braid type style, and then the turn to your father is just so moving.
Yeah, wow, that is.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Maro. Yeah. There's Maro Dowdle with Body Love McFadden. Yeah. Let's go. We have another first time caller. I believe Stuart is here. We gotta have you unmute. There you go. Hey, Stuart.
All right. Okay. Hello. Yes, I'm first time here. I'm in Seattle.
Yeah, great.
I have
thanks
cats,
so much for
but
being
they're
here.
not on screen.
Not pictured,
And,
but they're there.
I just today checked what the prompt was, and I discovered that the poem I wrote for one of last month's prompts works perfectly for this prompt.
Oh, that's
it's the Pantoon. The Pantoon about a shape from last month. Well, I'm a mathematician. I chose a Mobius strip. And in Mobius strip, if you go around it once, you end up on the other side. And so that was what the theme was.
That is perfect, yeah.
So we are reversing sides here. This is called Mobius Dialectic Dance. Once around the circle, do-si-do, and then return, we became our opposites, although we did not know. Do-si-do, and then return around our twisted path, although we did not know, we had switched our points of view. Around our twisted path, walking in each other's shoes, we had switched our points of view, although we did not choose. Walking in each other's shoes, once around the circle, although we did not choose, we became our opposites.
Well, that was great. Yeah, very fun use of that prompt, Stuart. And what's your last name, Stuart, or full name?
Anderson.
Stuart, yeah, great. Well, thanks so much for being here and sharing that. Yeah,
I definitely remember that poem, and I enjoyed reading it when I went through the submissions. Yeah, I was like, well, this is very clever. Then I was like, he must be in math or something.
Correct.
That was great. Well, thanks so much for joining. Hope you come back soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stuart Anderson. Yeah, great poem. All right. And let's go next to Zachary Honeycutt, see what he's got for us tonight. Hey, Zach.
Hello, Tim. Hey, Katie.
Hi.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah, great
Is
to
the
see
Pantone bandwagon continuing for you?
It's ended. It hit the wall. It's broken. It's done. Yeah.
Or solved completely. So one of the two.
No, I am switching. I'm switching to the sonnets now, and I'm happy that Christiana did the Shakespearean because I'm bringing the Spenserian to the show tonight.
Mine was an American sonnet at the beginning, so great.
Oh, we got some. All right.
Yeah. I'm really happy too that I posted I was going to read a Spenserian sonnet tonight because I had to do a double take because I saw Pedro Pointevin gave it a like. So I was really happy
nice.
about that.
Yeah, he's been commenting in the Facebook group, which is fun to see because I'm a big fan of him too.
Yeah, speaking of mathematicians.
Yeah,
and poets,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, cats and mathematicians on the show tonight. All right. Sonnet 26, The Trash. The baseball diamond appears so fast within my mind as the image goes, like the camera set on flash, the past image, a full mixed bag of highs and lows. You could pull out a baseball within the throes of two parents' jaws bickering, signed by Tommy Lasorda, like the pitcher who throws to the batter, who hits, makes a pop fly, runs past bases through beaches quick and sly. And you can find the sand from that Florida beach, high hopes and dreams with no price under low sky, words from soft those who differed from what they preached within the unit, found this within the trash, a baseball from that dad hard up on cash.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Zach.
Yeah.
I always love a sonnet. I love that as the image goes, like the camera,
Yeah.
that, that's getting rid of the regular syntax. And it works so great there.
Yeah, you covered a lot of ground in that poem, for sure.
Tried to do like the two perspectives, like to show, someone that was at a garage sale excited about a baseball, but it belonged to somebody else. And that was actually true. I lost some stuff and I had a Tommy Lasorda baseball. So
yeah. Well, now you've got the poem.
I got the poem. Yeah.
True story with Tommy Lasorda. So
I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. That's over my limited.
Somehow I lived in an apartment that was owned by Tom. He owned a bunch of apartments, and he owned the apartment we lived in. And the one time we talked through his thing, he talked about his nephew, Mike Piazza, who's going to be a great baseball player. And I got a Mike Piazza rookie baseball card because of the tip from Tommy Lasorda through the real estate manager.
Wow.
And I was 12 and very impressed with myself. Or maybe 14, but yeah. Anyway, that is a random story. No. Maybe 28.
That sounds like a poem. It sounds like a poem, Tim. It sounds like a poem.
It definitely does, yeah. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for this. Yeah, I haven't thought about Tommy Lasorda in a long time.
Yeah, I've never thought about him personally.
Well, those Weight Watchers commercials too.
I'm sorry. I know a lot of people are like, she doesn't know who that is. Whatever. I don't know who he is.
He's one of the best managers of all time.
All right.
Anyway.
Great. Sure.
All right. So let's go next to Jacob Pearson.
Oh.
Yeah, it's been a bit for Jacob.
Yeah, it has.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, dropped off the face of the earth for a while there, but I oscillate. And
glad you came back around the other side.
Glad you're here.
To the other side, precisely.
Nice.
Precisely.
Nice.
Yeah. So with my poem, I did wrestle with it at first, trying to figure out if I was going to do anything specific, but I decided to just keep it as general as possible, leave it up for interpretation. The only thing that was quite specific was this feeling that I got when I was a child, and we'd travel, and I'd see other people. And that's the first time as a child when you think there are other people, and whether I'm here or not to see them, they have lives. And it's this weird, like, I don't know, I haven't never been able to describe the feeling, but just the first time that you realize that it's not about you,
That is a certain
so
feeling,
this is the other side. There's a speck like an ant on the far side, small like pine seeds made during drought. And you are overcome with the feeling similar to when you visit a new place and witness new people. A feeling of loss for something you've never been a part of or will ever see again. Another speck joins the solitary dot. As they converse, you have the same thought, like when you find yourself weaving like seaweed through an ocean of others speaking a different language. What could they be saying? Pull out your phone, check the last texts from family or friends, and perceive the repetitive but never diminishing I love yous.
So, what a cool poem. Interesting things to talk about. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Jacob.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, great to have you back.
Yeah. See you next week.
Yeah.
Oh, good. He's putting the pressure on himself. I like that. Doing it for us. Good.
Good.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, Jacob Pearson with The Other Side. Let's go to Nate Jacob is here. Speaking of the other side. Hey Nate,
I don't know. I was like, a transition is meaningless, Tim.
Look at me. Hey, I don't think I could say anything about this poem that by the end of it won't sound like I was overselling it.
Okay.
So we'll just get to it. It's titled If You're a Duck. The forecast calls for rain through Thursday night, as did the forecast last week, 2 weeks ago too. And I sit at our corner lunch place waiting for it to occur to me, the word for a forecast that has already passed. And though I sit at the big window, it's so stormy out that I only see myself with my glass of emptying water and my half-eaten whole wheat toast grown soggy with melted butter for two. And you left hours ago for your twice-weekly water aerobics class with Mother, who needs the exercise almost as much as she needs to blame her wrinkles on anything but her aging. And every poem I write today mentions just how much I have it in for ducks, for their adorable waddling walk, for the way every landing is a crash landing until it's not, for their beaks and their colors and their perfect children. For longer than I can remember, I've despised them, seen them as some avian enemy, the so-called others from another side of some line I draw every time I hear their sharpened quack. The clouds broke just now, and across the street I see a restaurant advertising a duck dish, à l'orange, and I rise up in a new dignity, wondering how anyone can eat the hated creatures. Midway through that thought, my wife lands in the doorway, hair dripping wet from the Y, shaking her umbrella, and appearing for all I can imagine to be loving this weather, to be in love with being in every moment. And as the rain restarts behind her, my back's reflection moves across the giant window. I kiss her hello, mention, without a hint of irony, the lovely weather.
Yeah, what a sweet turn that poem to a love
really
poem.
nice.
Did not expect to see that. And I loved, where is that? I love rising up in a new dignity.
Yeah, that's very funny.
That's a great line. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
I do, for the record, I do like ducks.
I love duck.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
Well, I had some duck for the first time in a
Yeah,
while when we
same.
went out like not too long
I know,
ago.
and I was explaining how it's my favorite protein.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's true.
Wow.
I'm savage. Sorry. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Nate.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, that was Nate Jacob with If You're a Duck. Let's go to Nivedita Karthik next. Hopefully we caught her in time. I didn't see her back there. Hey, Nivi.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Katie. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, great. Good to see you.
Great to be back.
Let's see. So what do you got for us?
Surprisingly, I have nothing on the theme of either cats or the other side.
Okay.
But it was really fun listening to people reading about all of that. But mine is, I think it's absolutely different. I don't know if I captured the theme, but this is what I thought of when I read the prompt.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, yeah, wherever it takes you. Mm-hmm.
What the river said. At first, I pitied the stone, trapped, silent, unyielding, as the river wore it down, broke it into nothing. But the river spoke in ripples, told me of change, of how even stone must move, become sand, become earth. And I saw it was not breaking, but becoming.
Yeah, very
Oh,
profound
I really
poem
like
there.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nivi. That was great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Katie.
Yep.
Have a good evening.
Yep, have a good day.
Thank you.
Yep, that was Nivedita Karthik with What the River Said. And next, let's go to David Moose.
Hello, thank you.
Hi, David.
Hey, David. Yeah, great to
Good to
see you.
see you all again.
Yeah.
Fantastic interview today. Just amazing.
Oh,
really,
thanks.
really.
Glad you enjoyed it. Yeah,
just
me too.
loved it. Yeah. So, yeah, I struggled with this a lot too. But on Tuesday, I listened to the haiku episode of the Poetry Space,
Oh,
which
great.
is fantastic. Highly recommend.
Thanks.
And so then I was thinking about the prompt, and I thought, well, this is kind of what a haiku is supposed to do.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's what you were
telling you
saying
too.
when
I was
yeah.
saying when you were like, I don't have the time to write a poem. I was like, write a haiku. That's what a haiku is. Yeah, that's great. Yay.
So it may not be what you're thinking about. I haven't written a haiku since like the my eighth grade English class, but at least it'll be short. So here it is. Abandoned silo, waiting, green shoots emerge.
Yeah, very
I think
interesting.
that's really interesting. That's great, and I'm really impressed that you just are getting into haiku as an adult and came to that conclusion of thinking the prompt was like that. Like I was very proud of myself when it came up with that observation. So I'm impressed you just got there instantly.
Well, y'all are great teachers. No, I didn't get there instantly. I got there through listening to the podcast. So you guys are really good.
Yeah,
Thanks
well,
so much.
Yeah, thanks, David.
All right, all right.
Yeah, that's great. There's David Booth with the haiku, Abandoned Silo. Next, let's go to Susan Talley. It's been a bit since Susan's been here.
Yeah.
Hey, Susan.
Hey.
Yeah,
Hello.
great to see you. Yeah.
Hi. Iguana. I regret the absent curiosity, reason to linger in the doorway at the sight of the lizard, the lime green lizard, stark as he was frozen on the bed. Without exchange, only flight. In the sun's light, my hand hatched patterns, crinkled skin, raising tiny chain-like links, my thumb, web. Iguana, changing colors, roaming mangrove. The peaks of sunset and blue waters, the crest to crown his head, with belly pressed flat to the floor, from palms to elbows, torso raised, breathtaking the view from squinted eyes.
Oh, that's great. Love the imagination leaping
Yeah.
through that poem. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Susan.
Thank
Where have
you.
you been? It's great to see you after a long time.
Yes, I've been writing on my own, and I hope to keep following the poets here.
Excellent. Well, thanks so
Great.
much. Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Susan.
you.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
Adios.
Yep. That was Susan Talley with Iguana. Yeah, fun poem. Let's go next to Amanda Harris.
All right, great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you, Amanda. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. So once again, I ended up being short and to the point, which I think just suits me. Judgment looms according to the moon. Judgment looms higher than the sun, higher than the glittering earth, higher than the suffocating planet, higher even than the broken dot of my arc.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. I love the speed and tempo that your poems come out
Yeah.
with, and then you want to they linger.
Yeah. I love the explosiveness with which you read. It's exciting.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's the benefit of getting acting lessons as a kid, because I know when we were talking with the featured reader about the importance of acting and what it does to your mind poetically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
that's a really good point.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for being here and sharing
Thanks,
that, Amanda.
Amanda.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, there's Amanda Harris with Judgment Looms. Mary Keating is up next. Oh, great to see you, Mary.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, Hi, Mary. Yeah, how you doing?
This was a fun prompt, Katie. And I've always wanted to write about when you're driving down at night and there are lights on and windows, that feeling of what's going on the other side.
Yeah.
So I hope I did it. It's called Nestling. It should be nesting, not nestling. Well, nestling frames. Glowing windows in the dark of winter conjure toasty rooms with overstuffed couches. Children curled up, reading as Dad stokes the fire. Mom bringing hot cocoa with mountains of whipped cream dripping down the edges. Snow avalanches christen chocolate chip cookies. A yellow lab warming toes, jingling his tags as his ears prick up to the crunch of my car. Home, I turn the key, squeak the door open into a chilly room. Shadows obscure photos set on a dusty piano. I put on the kettle, sort the mail, add more recyclables to the pile while my family looks on from their frozen frames.
Really interesting. Yeah, that thought about the looking into the windows at night.
What's
It's really
going on.
interesting.
Yeah, it is.
It does feel like I always think about this in Wrightwood, the small town, where it's like there's the population's 5,000. And you see the same 50 people. It's like, what are the other 4,950 people doing behind those windows? And that's what that makes me think of. Thanks for sharing that. Really cool poem.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. And I like the pictures. Your pictures are looking out of frames at you too. So I hope you got that in the end.
Yeah, well, great.
Thanks.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, Mary Keating with Nestling Frames. And next up, let's go to Chelsea McClellan is here. Hey, Chelsea.
Hi. Sorry about that. I'm
Yeah,
also
no problem.
taking it right now.
So what do you got for us tonight? Yeah, we're having some audio issues just as ourselves. Don't worry about
sorry.
us.
That's why I'm like...
Yeah, there's something... It's not you. It's definitely...
It's this spaghetti that I'm holding. I think seems errant.
Is that in better? Maybe this was pulled out a little bit.
I think so. I
Let's
don't
fix
know.
it.
It's
Okay.
very picky.
Gosh,
so,
yeah.
Okay.
We haven't used wires in like a month. Sorry about that. So how are you doing, Chelsea?
I'm doing all right. Just hopping on. I was just taking care of a sick kid, so I'll probably hop
sorry
on.
to hear that.
Right-
Yeah,
right
lots of that
back
going
off.
around for sure this time of year. Yeah.
Yeah. So this poem was instigated by the fact that today is my son's 3rd birthday.
Well, happy birthday.
So it's called To My Third Born Son. To my third born son, each day that passes finds you more unruly. Today you're 3, but yesterday was quiet. When you were just a due date we held loosely. A prayer, a teacup full of red raspberry. The counter full of it too before I dried it. Each day that's passed has found us more unruly. Your hair is long and tousled. Your bangs are swooping. My hair is dry and graying. I'd call the stylist, but I can't hold a date I can't hold loosely. I don't respond to friends, then say I'm lonely. Time still travels slowly, but I'm biased. Each day that passes finds me more unruly, still holding on to grief like it's my duty. I could find her gravesite with my eyes shut. But she was just a due date we held loosely, according to the doctor. Are they soothing? The blanket flowers, growing large and uncompliant. Each day that passes finds them more unruly, like her, my firstborn baby, we held loosely.
Oh, that was great use of the villanelle with those
That's really
repetitions there.
beautiful.
That really was. Yeah.
Wow. So you were there dealing with a sick child writing a poem like that. That is really impressive.
That really is.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Chelsea. Yeah, Chelsea McClellan with To My Thirdborn Son. And next we have Tina Denniclaw.
Let's see here.
Hey, Tina.
Hi.
Hey. Let's see. I've got to unmute myself. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, I'm already unmuted?
Yeah, you're already. We're here. Yeah, good to see you.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's a backstory to my poem. It's very short. I was never close to my dad's mom. There was never any real dialogue between us. But ironically, as I grew older, I looked more and more like her. So by the time I was married, I looked just like she did as a young woman. And I took my newlywed husband up to my parents' hometown to meet all the relatives, including my dad's mom. And this poem is about that evening that we had. So it'll make more sense.
Yeah.
Or you'll see more meaning in it than otherwise. Okay, last time I saw Grandma, I thought it was the flashing light. I thought it was the flashing blue light bulb sitting in front of the silver-lined cup, Grandma's old camera. Looked down into the uncovered lens box and flashed to get the image. So many strikes of light, each nauseating me, then making me dizzy. Flash again, I pled in my mind, I'm going to be sick. And I was, in truth. And spent the next 3 days with flu. I didn't know that. When I turned away from Grandma to let the dizzy, dazzling fade out from my eyes. Did you see your Grandma following you? My newlywed husband had seen. She followed close behind you all night. I didn't know.
Yeah, very touching memory. Yeah, thanks for sharing the last time I saw Grandma. Thanks for sharing that, Tina.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Tina Denniclaw with Last Time I Saw Grandma. And I believe, Wayne is here but not connected. So I think that's going to wrap up the Zoom for tonight. And let's see if Ted sent us a poem, as he usually does. Here's a Beak poem by Ted Bernal. Great. We need this chair.
I am in love with this chair and the image that Ted sent.
Oh,
I want that chair so much. Sorry.
That's a dangerous, I don't know. It might be AI, though. It might not even exist.
It can exist. We can make it happen.
This is a yellow chair with a bunch of ravens in it, with a lot of ornate.
Like a gothic. Yeah. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It looks like it belongs in your office or something.
Yes, it does.
Anyway, that was a cool chair from Ted. And here's his poem. Lounge. Crow's beaks aim for my hind. Not necessarily murder, just projected pain. The light bulb in our heads says velvet will roll the dice and give us comfortable odds. Us being life, for us focused on cushion, weakening any kind of blow. We see dark, naked boughs differ from the bird. They branch out and expect leaves. On this, we soften beaks, fear nothing, and sit. Very interesting. Lounge by Ted Bernal. Thanks for sharing that as always, Ted. Let's see. And that's going to wrap up one little check. Yeah. Where was Dick today?
I know, I did think.
In transit. Let's read Dick's poem.
Yeah, I think he's earned that.
He has earned it. Yeah. So Dick says he's in transit on his way from Vermont. So if there's time, can you read me? I must say the prompt took me aback because as poets, I feel there's not other side. And we always arrive at an unexpected place, and opposite really has no meaning because we operate off of any preconceived continuum.
I'd say that's the goal, maybe not the reality all the time, but I love the spirit of it.
I do love the spirit of it. Yeah. If we don't, we're just giving in to the domineering nature of the emissary. Reference back to Ian McGilchrist. Yeah. All right, so here is Dick's poem, and happy to read. Dick's earned having his poem being read if he's not here. This is Minga at Shepherd Moon Farm. Oh, good. I was like, what's Minga?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. He defines it. Minga, cooperative work in a community to achieve a common goal. Okay. All the sides came together. The crooked and queer, the gay and straight. Pronouns were pronounced. The she's and he's, the many and they's. We reflected on the kitchen tool we resembled. The rubber spatulas felt useful that day. The dish rag and sponge ready to clean because they awoke in a mood for grime. The crock pot warmed us all real slow, and the old wooden spoon stirred the pot. Outside, the new snow covered our footprints. The sheep in the barn huddled and were fed from the hay we spread for them. Inside, Danny and Eva read from the chore chart. We divided into crews and set to work. Wood cutters cut. The plumbing crew plumbed pipes that had burst. I stayed in with the cooks who filled bowls with newly butchered lamb and fresh-baked bread and farm-made cheese. By dinner, I began to wonder, am I also a they? I am a man whose lust for women dashes and spins. I am he and his, but also kin to these Arcadian friends who have much reason to fear the rams and bucks of loathing, them who sharpen their horns. Yet these folk twine and weave and grow a many-they basket of sweet grass and reeds and holding hands in a steel-caged world of their kind and those and Bully Boy rants. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, coming together with that. Minga at Shepherd Moon Farm. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Dick. It's always glad you could be here in absentia, too.
Yeah.
So, all right, now that is going to wrap up the prompt lines for tonight. So let's do the Sciku. And the Sciku is based on this story, which I found fascinating, from Hokkaido University in Japan. Let me see if I can fit it on the screen. Life's building blocks in Bennu samples. And so there's only 2 times, the problem with having looking for life on asteroids and stuff is that as soon as it enters the atmosphere, it's contaminated, Only twice have we been able to collect samples from actual asteroids in space and then isolate them and then be able to study them later in a pristine way. It's a really difficult thing to do. It's Japan did it twice and NASA did it once. It says it over here. And in those samples, in one of them, there was one of the 5 nucleotides. In this new one, though, all 5 nucleobases that make DNA and RNA were in this sample in this asteroid.
What?
Yeah. And so the whole idea that, that life was sort of seeded from somewhere else on Earth, I mean, gets a big boost when the only 2 samples we ever have these nucleotides.
Wow.
So, and that's the building blocks of life.
It feels like it should be a big story.
It does.
It
really
seems
does.
important.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't beat drones over New Jersey.
Beats it for
or
me.
whatever. A square on Mars. You see that one? Anyway, and maybe it was seated there, and then whatever. Anyway, that is the story for this week from Hokkaido University, and also vitamin D3 they found on there, by the way.
That's probably because I take so much of it that it's out in space also.
Maybe. Anyway, that is the story for this week. And the Sciku itself is this. And into the frying pan spermia. And into the frying pan spermia. That is your Sciku for this week. And that is the show for this week. Thanks everybody for being here. It's been a lot of fun. Hayden was a great guest. Glad everybody enjoyed that interview. And really great poems on the prompt lines. A tough prompt, but everybody came through. So thanks for doing that, Katie, and for being here as always. And what is your prompt for next week?
Okay. We are going to write an elegy that's not about a person. So most elegies are written for people. And instead we're going to look at it as to not a person. So it can be an idea. any way you want to interpret not a person is
All
fair game.
So we had a very challenging prompt. This is a little more open-ended. A lot of ways you could go. So there's a free for all.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm
but what is the difference between an elegy and a eulogy? Because I can never keep them straight.
I believe the eulogy is like usually given at a funeral and is thought of more in that context.
Okay.
And the elegy is
like more of just a remembrance in general.
A remembrance, like a lamenting the death of the person, as opposed to a eulogy being more, I think, about coming together in the end. But if you disagree, show me your own version of the elegy.
Well, it's definitely. Well, it's one of those things I will never remember, because once you get something like
don't worry,
backwards,
I got your back.
Okay, thanks, bro. All right. Well, that was the prompt for this week. Next week's guest is going to be SC Flynn, and note the special time. So in the United States, next week is Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh.
And I don't want to compete with the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, poetry is better than the Super Bowl.
And we would win, but I mean, like, you feel bad for the Super Bowl.
Okay, the truth is, I didn't know that the Bills weren't going to be in the Super Bowl.
We were planning it like they would be, so we moved. But I guess it's important for Jared Campbell.
It is important for Jared Campbell. So we're not going to do a show during the Super Bowl. We're going to do it, what would that be, 8 hours early at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And SC Flynn is an Irish poet who we would have to do early. So see how I planned this all out? So SC Flynn in Ireland, who was part of our tribute to Irish poets last spring or 2 springs ago. He's got a new book, The Color of Extinction, and he's going to be the guest at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. So, we're going to roll out of bed early. We kind of sleep in, but we're not going to sleep in next weekend.
Well, this is news to me.
There you go. And now we talked about it. Anyway, that is SC Flynn, Rattlecast number 280. His book, The Color of Extinction. The prompt, write an elegy that is not about a person. That's going to be a Rattlecast 280. February 9th, again, noon Eastern Time. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.